A German soldier stares at something that shouldn't exist. Not here. Not now. Not for him. It's just a soft drink. Brown, fizzing, ordinary. But to this man, recently captured in Tunisia, still wearing the dust of the Africa corpse, this 5-cent bottle represents the collapse of everything he believed about the world. This is the story of how America won a psychological war it didn't know it was fighting. How prisoners of war experienced a cognitive dissonance so profound that it shattered their ideology more completely than any bullet could. And how the weapon that accomplished this wasn't a bomb or a tank. It was ice cream. Between 1943 and 1946, over 370,000 German prisoners of war arrived on American soil expecting brutality. Nazi propaganda had prepared them for starvation, torture, systematic abuse. What they encountered instead was so unexpected, so contrary to their worldview, that it triggered a mass ideological collapse. The truth isn't always complex. Sometimes it's as simple as this. The losing side went hungry while their captured soldiers ate dessert. Let's start where their transformation began, in the North African desert, May 1943. Rommel's legendary Africa Corps had just surrendered. These weren't fresh conscripts. These were hardened veterans who'd fought across thousands of miles of desert. For months, they'd survived on increasingly meager rations. Ersatz coffee made from roasted grains, hardtack biscuits, whatever they could scavenge. Then came their first encounter with American field rations. While American GIs complained about K-rations, calling them monotonous, bland, barely adequate, German POWs treated them like treasure chests. Each compact box contained items many had never seen. Processed cheese, fruit concentrates, actual chocolate bars, real coffee, not the chicory substitute they'd grown accustomed to, and most importantly, sugar. One officer would later write, "We thought these were special meals prepared for propaganda purposes. It took us days to understand. This was their emergency food. The food they complained about." But the real education began on the Atlantic crossing. Liberty ships, those mass-produced cargo vessels that America churned out faster than Germany could sink them, transported thousands of POWs across the ocean. And on these ships, something impossible happened. They served ice cream. Not once. Not as a special occasion. Multiple times during the voyage, using onboard ice cream makers that were standard equipment on American vessels. Think about what this meant. While German U-boats prowled the Atlantic, while their own families rationed bread, these prisoners, the enemy, were eating frozen dessert in the middle of the ocean. The cognitive dissonance was beginning. Picture Tennessee in summer 1943. Camp Crossville sits in the humid heat, housing thousands of German POWs. And inside the camp there's a store, what the Americans call a PX. This is where the ideology breaks. On the shelves, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, RC Cola, Dr. Pepper, Hershey bars, Mars bars, Nestle chocolate, cigarettes, chewing gum, fresh fruit when available. Everything priced at civilian rates, the same 5 cents for a Coke that an American child would pay. POWs earn 80 cents daily for their labor. That's 16 bottles of Coca-Cola, 16 pieces of candy, every single day. But here's what matters more than the quantity. It's the casualness of it all. Guards don't guard the vending machines. Nobody counts how many sodas you buy. Americans walk past half-finished bottles without a second glance. This isn't ration treasure. It's background noise. It's ordinary. For men who came from a nation where sugar was measured in grams, where coffee was recycled grounds, where chocolate was reserved for frontline troops, this casual abundance was incomprehensible. The Coca-Cola Company's archives reveal that major camps received weekly deliveries of 200 to 300 cases. That's over 7,000 bottles per week at some facilities. Not for propaganda. Not for special occasions. Just because. And here's what struck the technically minded Germans hardest. Standardization. A Coca-Cola in Texas tasted identical to one in Maine. The same recipe, the same carbonation, the same experience, replicated millions of times across an entire continent. This level of industrial coordination, this quality control, this distribution network, it dwarfed anything the supposedly superior German industry had achieved. Every bottle became a silent argument against their entire belief system. Camp Aliceville, Alabama. Summer 1943. An incident that would be repeated in stories for decades. The kitchen had sugar, bags of it, a common sight. But the humid Alabama summer had caused several hundred pounds to harden into chunks. In Germany, this would trigger a crisis. Careful salvage operations, steam treatments, anything to recover such precious resources. The American cooks? They threw it away and ordered more. German POWs working the kitchen reportedly stood in stunned silence. Some became visibly distressed. The waste of this single incident represented more sugar than some German families would see in a year. This wasn't an isolated event. It was a pattern. A philosophy of abundance that Germans couldn't process. Mess halls left sugar bowls on tables. Unlimited. Unguarded. Use what you want. Bakeries produced cakes, pies, cookies with the kind of sugar content that would have been criminal luxury in the Third Reich. Ice cream, which had vanished from German life before the war even started, appeared regularly. Hand-cranked at first, then electric machines. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, flavors Germans only vaguely remembered. Let's talk numbers, because numbers don't lie. German civilians in 1943, 280 grams of sugar monthly, when available. American POWs in 1943, unlimited sugar plus regular ice cream plus candy plus soft drinks. The arithmetic was brutal. The enemy was eating better than the people they were supposedly fighting for. By late 1944, something unprecedented was happening. Something that would have been unthinkable at the start of the war. German POWs were sending food packages home. Let that sink in. Imprisoned soldiers were using their camp wages to buy American products. Chocolate, instant coffee, canned goods, and mailing them to their families in Germany. International Red Cross records document approximately 11 million parcels sent from German POWs to Germany during their captivity. Most contained food. This was the complete inversion of how prisoner systems were supposed to work. Traditionally, families send packages to imprisoned relatives. But here, the prisoners had access to more abundance than the free citizens back home. Imagine receiving a letter from your husband, father, or son in an American prison camp. He's gained weight. He's healthy. And he's sending you chocolate bars because he knows you're starving. What does that do to your belief in the ideology that started the war? What does that do to your faith in the government that promised victory? Every package was a referendum on the Nazi state. Every chocolate bar was a vote against the system. Between 1945 and 1946, these men returned to Germany. They came back heavier than when they left. Medical examinations confirmed most had gained significant weight in captivity. They returned to families who had lost weight, to cities reduced to rubble, to a nation where a cigarette could buy a meal, where coffee was more valuable than currency. These men became something unexpected, ambassadors of a system they'd fought against. They'd seen a nation wealthy enough to waste food during a global war. They'd experienced a society where abundance wasn't hoarded by elites but distributed democratically. They'd witnessed industrial capacity so vast that sharing with enemies didn't even register as a sacrifice. One veteran, interviewed in 1985, put it perfectly, "My first Coca-Cola tasted like the future. It was sweet, unnecessary, available to anyone with a nickel. That drink contained everything Nazi Germany wasn't." These former POWs would become unexpected advocates for the Marshall Plan. They'd seen American abundance firsthand, not as threat or propaganda, but as lived experience. They knew America could afford to rebuild its enemies because they'd witnessed the casual magnitude of American productive capacity. Their testimony helped shape West Germany's acceptance of American aid and influenced the economic philosophy that would drive the German economic miracle of the 1950s. Here's the lesson. Ideology isn't just defeated by military might. Sometimes it's defeated by demonstration, by the simple, irrefutable evidence of a society that works differently than you were told it could. The Third Reich promised strength through sacrifice, victory through deprivation, greatness through conquest. America responded with ice cream for prisoners of war. It turns out that abundance is its own argument, that prosperity speaks louder than propaganda, that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a bomb. It's a 5-cent bottle of Coca-Cola, cold from the vending machine, available to anyone who asks. The men who couldn't believe such plenty existed became its most convincing witnesses. They'd seen the future, and it was fizzing, cold, and sweet. That's how you win a war that continues after the shooting stops. Not with bullets, but with proof that another world is possible.